There we go. Thank you.
All right, so ontology of social resource access. The context is social determinants of health. There's two kinds of social determinants of health data. Primarily, there's area level. So you get data at the level of the census tract in aggregate, or individual level. That's about an actual individual person. Those are collected using social determinants of health instruments or surveys or screeners or questionnaires or whatever you want to call them. So there's multiple of these SDOH instruments. They ask about similar or related things in variable ways. So interoperability is an issue that ontology is well poised to solve. Also, the survey world is really bad at informatics, and they have no data models. And Prepare's doing a little better, but it's still just a giant Excel spreadsheet that's hard to navigate. So a lot of these instruments ask about whether an individual has access to some resource, which I just call X generically. But the X's can include food, medicine, transportation. So if we have a general approach to access to X, then we can reuse it in each of these more specific situations. And that'll help with interoperability of these screeners. So this is an example from the PREPARE, which is an acronym, Protocol for Responding to and Assessing Patient Assets, Risks, and Experiences. In the past year, have you or any family members you live with been unable to get any of the following when it was really needed? Check all that apply. Now, all the emphasis is the original. I didn't do that. Food, utilities, medicine, or any healthcare, phone, for example. Another tool that's commonly used is the health-related social needs screening tool. This one's about food. Within the past 12 months, you worried that your food would run out before you got money to buy more. Often true, sometimes true, never true. And these introductory instructions are wordy, but notice that they differ from the ACORN screener, which asks the same questions exactly, but gives different instructions and preliminaries to answer them. And both ACORN and HSRN ripped these two questions off from a third party. That's another common feature of this space is, a lot of people develop these questionnaires and instruments and copyright them in the hopes they'll make a lot of money. But then the defense of the copyright and the respect of the copyright seems a little sketchy. Here's also from ACORN. Do you have access to any of the following devices? Landline, simple cell phone, smartphone, computer. I don't know why the green highlighting's there. It's from the original. I didn't do that. So some notes on X. X is usually some resource that preserves or sustains the individual's life, but either by virtue of being a basic necessity, food, water, air, or an entity for ensuring the quality of a basic necessity, healthy food, clean water, clean air, or physical protection such as shelter, housing, but also protection against violence and natural disasters. Or an entity for the preservation, restoration, or enhancement of health, such as we talked about medicines. Some X's, like phones, seem a little less critical, but arguably they're increasingly important, and that's why they're asking about them. Note that these things I did not intend to be mutually exclusive, but I was trying to be exhaustive, so if you have other ideas about what goes in the X category, I'm happy to have suggestions. So society as a whole develops institutions and their associated infrastructure to create and enhance X's. So we have an entire institution for developing food and distributing it and getting it to grocery stores, restaurants, and so on and so forth. And social progress is often measured by how well these institutions function. So we eliminate hunger, do we have a safe food supply, clean water relative to the past, anybody have problems with? There's a lot of problems with forever chemicals and water supply of rural areas of Wisconsin, like PFAS, et cetera. So the ontology for modeling and representing social entities does not yet have an institution class, but it will be necessary for what follows. So that's future work I want to do with others. And I started talking with Barry about it, and he's interested. But if you say food distribution, we could, we have a food production institution, which is an institution and bearer of some food production function. And a food production function is a function and realized by some food production. And then helpfully, Food On, a farm to fork ontology, has defined food production already, so I can reuse that. A planned process involving the rearing, manufacture, or distribution of food material. Note on institutions and functions. So at a higher level, a lot of the work on institutions defines institutions as norms and rules, which don't seem very material to bear a function. So if institutions as defined by experts are not comprised of at least some material parts, we'd have to adjust. We could, in that case, create something like institutional infrastructure as the aggregate of material entities participating in institutional processes, and then relate the institution to its infrastructure. And then the infrastructure could bear the function if we had to do that. One recent definition of institution, however, and I did read this paper in advance of this meeting in some detail, implies the inclusion of humans as institutional component parts, and thus that an institution is a material entity. So it's several layers of the hierarchy, but you get it. So I feel like we're on solid ground in saying institutions are material entities and can therefore bear a function. On the side of the individual person, a person has a capability to procure food for themselves. Not every person, however, like, babies can't procure food on their own. That's a capability that they develop as they grow. It's a human growth and development issue. And the person's capability and the function of the institution are reciprocally dependent dispositions. And I got this from the BFO book. It's legit. I'll explain that in a minute. So before you jump on that, if one disposition or the other or both are dysfunctioning to some degree, then the individual will have greater difficulty accessing food. Most instrument questions do not differentiate root cause of disaccess. But mostly, the blame is put on the institution and not as much on the individual. But like I said, they don't usually ask. BFO recognizes reciprocal dependence. This from the BFO book, reciprocal dependence among realizable dependent continuants. Consider the cases of husband and wife, doctor and patient. Here, pairs of reciprocally dependent roles are involved. And this is my emphasis added. The first role in each pair can be realized only if the second is realized also. So the person getting food is only realizes their capability if it also realizes the function of the institution, right? And then with dispositions, the key and lock example, they have reciprocally dependent dispositions that the unlocking of the lock only works if both dispositions are realized. I will say, however, though, I don't know that there's a relation in BFO that you can declare two dispositions reciprocally dependent somehow. So in summary, access to X involves a social institution or multiple institutions with a function to create and provide X, and an individual with a capability to access X. And this is capability in the sense that we've been discussing at various ontology conferences and meetings, to access X, and the function and capability are reciprocally dependent dispositions for the process of individual person accessing X. And then we can apply that subsequently to all the X's mentioned in these screeners: food, medicine, phones, utilities, and so on, healthcare, transportation. So this is part of the work we're doing for our UO1 in the Behavioral and Social Ontology Consortium on the Apricot project, where our role is to integrate social determinants of health data with behavior change intervention data. So the PI in the project is the lead of the behavior change intervention ontology. And so we're syncing up BCIO and No Mercy. And gratitude to folks I've talked to about this. I apologize for misspelling Susan's last name. Should have an E at the end. That's it.